What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for joining this episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, quiet weekend. Wasn't real crazy until we were all settling down on Sunday night, getting ready for a long week ahead of free agency, the work week starting Monday. And then we sat on the couch, turned our phones on, and, well, chaos began. I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so, guys. DK Metcalf is a Pittsburgh Steeler after trading a second-round pick and signing him to a massive 5-year, $150 million contract extension with an average salary of $30 million a year. What does this mean for George Pickens? What does it mean for the quarterback situation? We have some insight on both things. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers could be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I got two names that currently sit above him in their leaderboards, but I have a name that sits below him, and I'll give you the realistic probability that Aaron Rodgers ends up in black and gold this season. Free agency starts at noon. Things are just getting started, and I'll start the show with this one before I ask you how you're doing. Last night I got a phone call, and it was right after the DK trade. Obviously, everybody's scouring the internet, scouring text messages, calling everybody they possibly can to not only get things confirmed, but to understand what is happening, what this means for right now, what it means for later. And the message that I got was that the Pittsburgh Steelers are just getting started. And by the end of today, they will have moves in place that are strong enough to send a very clear message to whoever they pick at quarterback to say, this is your team, and we are going to do everything possible to set you up for success in 2025. The Steelers are taking no chances, and I don't know what that means. I was not given any details beyond that. All I was given was a direct message of the Pittsburgh Steelers are ready to make some noise, and they're ready to show whoever their quarterback is that they have a roster around them that is going to win this season. Starts with DK Metcalf. Absolutely mind-blowing trade. Shocked the internet. Again, second-round pick in my eyes is nothing, but we'll dive into all of that here in a second, plus so much more. Nick, it's a beautiful one here in the Berg. You want to talk turn of the tides, okay? We went in a 48-hour span. It was snowing Texas dust or something in the city of Pittsburgh and freezing to Sunday night. A little bit chilly. Boom, 65 degrees this morning. And I think that's because DK Metcalf was trying to tell everybody, I want to go to a West Coast team, warm-weathered team. Pittsburgh said, hey, we'll help. No worries. We got you. Even nature's on the side of the trade. How you feeling, my friend? And are you ready for a week here in free agency?
I am 1,000% stunned. Now, we had talked about this being a possibility last week, but I think all of us and everybody that was watching had the same thought. Yeah, but the Steelers never go out and make this move. And I think that is echoed throughout the reasoning since this trade happened. Like, think about everything that happened over the weekend. Devontae Adams went to the Los Angeles Rams.
He did.
Geno Smith got traded to the Las Vegas Raiders. Myles Garrett signed the biggest outside linebacker contract that we have ever seen, and probably the largest one that we are going to see this summer. And yet, what is the biggest topic of conversation? That the Pittsburgh Steelers were aggressive, and they went out and they got a huge name on the offensive side of the football. So even everybody else is stunned that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Omar Khan pulled this off. So with that in mind, I think people in Pittsburgh are having a great morning, and hopefully we can just add to it with this discussion on DK.
Yeah, and it starts with the trade package. Obviously, a second-round pick is huge. You love to land a superstar wide receiver. You love it even more when you don't have to give up the 21st pick in the draft. I said last week, near the end of last week, that I was comfortable giving up a first-round pick for DK Metcalf. I was very comfortable with that move. Second round pick seemed even better when Diana Rossini and Josina Anderson and everybody else were saying that the price tag is dropping. And I don't care what your thoughts are. Everybody's opinion is valid. But in this case, it's clear as day. You are not, by no means, no matter how big of a steal it is. I don't care if Emeka Egbuka falls into the second round. You will not, in the 2025 NFL draft, with the 52nd pick, land a DK Metcalf. You won't even come close. So I don't care that they need a defensive tackle and a running back and a quarterback and maybe an offensive guard and maybe a left tackle. You could fill all of these things. You could still do a lot of them in the draft. What you can't do is add a DK Metcalf. That is not available anywhere, no matter where you draft. You're hoping and praying that Emeka Egbuka falls to you at the end of the first round, which at that point, then you have to go defensive tackle or running back in the second, and everything gets pushed down the draft board. The Pittsburgh Steelers have pulled this off to where they get a superstar wide receiver, a true number one, no questions asked, a guy with his worst NFL season being George Pickens' second best NFL season. That is who DK Metcalf is, who comes here for the price tag of the 52nd pick in the draft, while you can still draft a guy like Kenneth Grant. You can still draft a guy like Walter Nolan, where you can look at this and say, if we need a running back in the third round, we don't have to adjust. If the quarterback situation is a little bit iffy, we don't have to adjust. The Pittsburgh Steelers have set themselves up to where all of their needs, all of their questions are still very much so possibilities to fill, while also landing a superstar wide receiver. That's a huge win. Now, when it comes to the 5 years, $150 million extension that everybody wants to talk about, there are reasons to say what, obviously, but I am not judging the contract at all until we see the details of the contract. Because 5 years, $150 million sounds massive and alarming. And you could sit there and say, this guy's 34 years old when his contract ends, and you're going to pay him $30 million a year from age 32 to 34? No questions asked? I don't know if that's going to be the case. I have a hard time believing it's going to be. I have the thought that Omar Khan has somehow worked this out to where the Steelers might be paying $30 million a year the first 2 years, and then it kind of dips, and then it soars back up later with an easy out in year 4, year 3, somewhere in that time span, to where the Pittsburgh Steelers can work at this and decide halfway through it, DK is 31 years old. He doesn't have it the way that he used to have it. And we're not paying a 31-year-old wide receiver $30 million a year, which at the same time will be crazy cheap. Crazy cheap, because Jamar Chase is going to get 40 plus. And if that's the case, it just goes up from there. Nobody comes back down. These numbers don't go lesser and lesser after somebody signs a massive deal. I mean, look at Josh Allen last night, signing a contract that beats the guarantee of Deshaun Watson. And you're looking at it going, I thought no quarterback contract was ever going to beat Deshaun Watson's. Yep, well, here we are. And it was beaten. And $600 million is a lot of money. And I'm sure that that's just the beginning of the trend. I have no issues with the money until I see the contract details. Now, if it's all guaranteed all 5 years, which there's no chance it will be, there are issues. But for right now, where I look at this, you gave the guy exactly what he wanted. You have a wide receiver for the next 6 years. No questions asked, unless you want to get rid of him. And you gave up the 52nd pick in the draft. That is huge. The Steelers would have given that up for Brandon Ayuk last summer. That's what they were looking to give up, was a second-round pick after the draft, which means that Brandon Ayuk would have went for the same price tag as a DK Metcalf. The difference is $3 million, which in 2025 is $1 million, because Brandon Ayuk was going to sign for $27 million. DK Metcalf is 28 point some million dollars this season in his current contract. And you got to, in my opinion, you got DK Metcalf. That's what you're looking for. Like, that's a guy who comes here I get it. DK Metcalf is a guy that will punch you right in the face on the field. And all of those memes, every single one of them, where it's DK and George Pickens just beating the hell out of cornerbacks. I mean, they're all true, but he comes with much less off the field drama. And he sends a loud and clear message to your offense in a year where you need it. Not last year. Last year's behind us. Can't do anything about it. 2025, the Steelers needed to send a message to every quarterback in the league and say, this is our guy, and this is just the beginning. And they did that. DK Metcalf, this is a win. This is an A-plus trade, in my opinion. I mean, you are a guy that thought that the Steelers a week ago this wasn't going to happen because they were going to get outbid. They did not get outbid. Aggressive with the second-round pick, which in my eyes is a steal for this guy. I mean, you got the news as we all got the news. What were your thoughts? What are your thoughts as things have settled down?
The big thing that I've been thinking about is the clear difference between this year and last year. Yeah. Last year, Omar Khan said, well, let me get the team in place, and then we'll try to get that star wide receiver as the final piece to the puzzle. This year, he said, well, it didn't work last year, and we were left at the altar. So we need to be even more aggressive this year. We need to make this move, before they even signed a quarterback, before they made the decision on the most important position on the entire team in this entire league. They said, we need to be aggressive on the piece that we missed out on last year. That to me is what jumped out, because last year everybody said, well, he's too passive. But I think we all know that in the first 2 years of Omar Khan, he has been anything but passive. Yep. But as I said last week, he is somebody that just does not want to he doesn't want to lose a trade. He doesn't want to get embarrassed. He doesn't want to get taken to the woodshed. He doesn't want to be the Ryan Poles of the entire Omar Khan, Ryan Poles conversation. So he didn't want to be in that position. Fortunately for him, he was able to get this done, and I'm surprised that he was able to get this done in a way that it makes the Steelers look extremely good, and he gets that superstar wide receiver before he even goes and addresses all the other holes. Yep. The difference in aggressiveness, the amped up aggressiveness, is everything Pittsburgh Steelers fans have been asking for, because at the end of season press conference, they said the same exact things. Well, there's going to be changes. Well, it's going to be different this offseason. Well, we're feeling a little bit of a sense of urgency after what we saw go down at the end of this year. They said the same thing after they lost in Buffalo. It didn't happen. They ended up going until August. We were at Latrobe eating lunch, me and you, talking about, well, do you think they actually pull this off? It's only been 5 months since they said they were going after Ayuk. And here we are 2 days before free agency even opens, and they've already netted their biggest fish of the offseason, with the quarterback situation, of course, still looming.
And there are questions that come with this, big ones. And I mean, you could sit here all day and praise the Pittsburgh Steelers, but what does it mean for the football team is what everybody wants to know right now. The biggest one is George Pickens, who, I mean, it's no coincidence that they both wear number 14, right? You can't even make a graphic right now. I tried to make t-shirts last night, all night long, and I'm just sitting there, I'm going, I'm not going to sit here and spend my time making a t-shirt graphic when I don't even know the guy's number. George Pickens is the biggest question. What comes with this? Does George Pickens enter the trade block? I think you have to take it full circle, because this is where we are. Okay. Let's look at the offseason as a whole. And I'm not going to sit here and take a victory lap. That is not what I'm going to do. But I am going to continuously bring up things that we have spoke about and reported on this show. Justin Fields is their top guy, remains their top guy. The Pittsburgh Steelers have wanted to explore the idea of Justin Fields and have named him their leader throughout the offseason. We are 3 hours away from free agency beginning, the legal tampering period beginning, which is free agency. Justin Fields remains their top guy, although we'll talk Aaron Rodgers here in a second. George Pickens, 2 months ago at this point, was a name that we said on this show the Pittsburgh Steelers were ready to find a trade for if one presented itself at the right price tag. But there were contingencies to this, that there were thoughts that George is entering the final year of his deal and the Pittsburgh Steelers are ready to move on from the character concerns, but they needed to have a good value for him and they needed to have a replacement plan. Well, they just got the replacement plan. That's DK Metcalf. And 5 years, $130 million sure as hell looks like George Pickens is not going to get a contract extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Does not look like that's in his favor. A trade, in my eyes, if this happens 4 days from now and there are no wide receivers signed outside of a DK Metcalf trade, for one, the city of Pittsburgh is already on fire. We are all losing our minds about what the hell's going on. But the way it happened right now, heading into free agency, with names like Darius Slayton still very much so on their minds, means that the Pittsburgh Steelers have their wide receiver 1 to a long-term deal, and they need a wide receiver 2. And Darius Slayton feels real good as a wide receiver 2. My bold prediction on Friday was that the Pittsburgh Steelers double-dipped at wide receiver. I still think I stand with that bold prediction because George is well aware right now that he's not going to get paid. That obviously was made clear to him through this trade. Whether it was said to him or not, it was made clear as day that is not going to happen. And there's no chance his agent is sitting there saying, no, there's maybe. No, his agent, like every other NFL agent, watched this happen. And when George is either getting traded or he's playing on the final year of his contract. And if they could go out and get a Darius Slayton, if they could go out and get somebody like a Cooper Kupp, if they could go out and get that second wide receiver somewhere, somehow, I would imagine George Pickens is on his way out because George Pickens' price tag just went up. Let's look at that from that side. DK goes for a second round pick. You made the argument that DK Metcalf and George Pickens are the same player. George is 4 years younger. I'm not saying that the entire NFL agrees with that. I am saying that George Pickens' starting price starts at a second round pick because if DK's was a second, George Pickens, who's 24 years old, is a second round pick, and teams will ignore the character concerns. I'm guessing George is on his way out. I don't know how quickly it's going to be, but if I had to look at this, I would say the chances of George staying versus the chances of George leaving lean heavily towards George on the trade block. And I would imagine the Steelers are good. I mean, look at you. The Patriots were ready to make a splash for DK. I would imagine they just weren't ready to give up their second round pick for a 28-year-old. 24-year-old's a totally different deal. You get George Pickens' entire career, and you already know this guy's a superstar. Mike Vrabel is easily a guy who will look at him and say, I've already dealt with A.J. Brown. I know how to do this. This will be no issue for me. I think George is going to have a market, and on top of that, I think the Steelers are ready to move on. I think this trade solidified that. I got a hard time believing George Pickens is here by the NFL draft. I would say there's a possibility by the end of this week. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been, especially since this trade went down and we saw that they immediately signed him to a $150 million extension. Yeah. I've been trying to rack my brain around, is there any way, shape, or form that they end up paying 2 wide receivers when in the history of their franchise, they've barely ever paid one? Like, this is a monumental moment for their franchise where they're actually going out and paying an offensive weapon that is not a quarterback that much money. Now, at the same time, what I will say is, how many times have we said that since Omar Khan took over? That, oh, this is first time we've seen this really ever for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They fired an offensive coordinator midseason. They completely reshifted their focus at quarterback after drafting a quarterback in the first round 2 years prior in last year's offseason. So we've seen them break the mold little by little, piece by piece, since Omar Khan took over. So maybe, just maybe, there's a chance that they break the mold again. But I think the prevailing theory, and the theory that I would probably subscribe to the most, is that they are not going to pay George Pickens. And that leaves, like you mentioned, 2 roads. And I think Pickens would prefer one over the other. Like, Pickens might like Pittsburgh, but he's probably not going to like Pittsburgh over playing on the last year of a contract whenever he's going to have to split targets with a guy like DK Metcalf. So you look at the 2 roads, and one is play on the final year, one is trade. I think there's one that has higher upside for both the team and for the player too. Because if George gets traded, George gets paid. If he stays in Pittsburgh, there's a higher likelihood that something's going to happen that's going to cause him to get paid less or much less, depending upon what happens in his final year of his contract.
Exactly. And if the George shenanigans continues, you got to imagine that's going to stick. You know, at this point, it's like Mike Tomlin denied the football or the playoff game, not the playoff game, the Chiefs game thing The George Pickens skipping practice or being late to practice was early in the season, so that's kind of already faded. He didn't really have any on the field moments where you went, George, why are you not doing something? There was none of that. It was all off the field stuff this offseason or this season. That could all be hidden. Teams could overlook that. We're locked into the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, Mike Vrabel's not. He's not. He doesn't have time to be scrolling on Twitter, looking at mine and your Twitter account, saying George was late for practice. That's not good. And he's not going to call Mike Tomlin and say, hey, how's George? And Mike's going to be like, oh, he sucks. He's terrible teammate. Terrible. He's not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They're going to support their guy. They're going to make him look good. I have no faith George shows up on the last year of his deal. I mean, he could shock me, and good for him if he does, but it just doesn't make sense. If the door was open for a long-term deal after the season, makes a little bit of sense. But the door is shut. There is no long-term deal in Pittsburgh. George has 1 year left, and I'd have to imagine that he's already having conversations to say, you should get me out of here. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are sitting around thinking, yeah, that's a good idea. I think we are going to get you out of here. I think that's where we go. Then on the other side of this, there's the quarterback. And I'll tell you what Adam Schefter is reporting, what Albert Breer is reporting first, and then I will tell you what I am hearing, because again, last night I spent a lot of time doing a lot of digging, and I got some answers, interesting ones I am excited to share with all of you guys. Adam Schefter and Albert Breer are both reporting that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have conversations with Aaron Rodgers starting at noon about a potential merger or union, I should say, and the Pittsburgh Steelers making Aaron Rodgers, the 41-year-old, their starting quarterback in 2025. Now, for those of you who live off of content of the Pittsburgh Steelers, aka myself, there is no crazier scenario than Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf. For those of you who sit on a couch or at a bar or at a buddy's house or watch it on your phone at work every Sunday, locked in, hoping and praying for victories of the black and gold, I will say this. It is by far not the best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is a brutal situation to be in. But Aaron Rodgers with DK Metcalf and probably Darius Slayton, we'll assume Darius Slayton, but we could also toss George Pickens in there and Pat Freiermuth and a running game and Arthur Smith. I mean, crazier things have happened in the NFL than to say this isn't going to work. And I had this pointed out to me last night with the Aaron Rodgers situation because I knew this was coming this morning. I didn't really want to believe it, but I knew it was coming. That Kurt Warner was viewed as a guy who sucked before he went to Arizona. Like it was over. It was done. There was nothing left. And then he took him to a Super Bowl. And it's not likely that Aaron Rodgers pulls that off in Pittsburgh, but there are many in the NFL that believe that he could. And I trust those in the NFL more than I trust myself any day. I don't think it's the best. I don't think it works out in the Steelers' favor. I do like it more than taking a shot on Danny Dimes. I do like it more than taking a shot on Jackson Dart in the first round or Jalen Milroe in the first round. I like it better than Quinn Ewers in the third. I don't mind Aaron Rodgers. I don't love it. I could agree to give it a shot if it's the best case scenario out of all the scenarios, but it sure doesn't sound like Justin Fields is really dead set on coming back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which at this point just kind of feels like, okay, you have to accept that. And there are questions that come with that. What's the offer? What's really holding them back? There's no chance. I texted you and Jack Markowski. I said, this is what I'm hearing. And what I'm hearing is that maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers leaked the trust thing with Justin Fields. That maybe that might not be as accurate as we believe it is. And I have a hard time believing, like, what is Justin nervous about? What would that even be? What I understand that he got benched for Russell Wilson, but he's not getting benched for Skylar Thompson. That's not there's nobody on the roster to challenge him. The Steelers are not bringing back two veteran quarterbacks. They're bringing back one, and that's Justin Fields. They've made it known throughout the entire offseason they want him to be a starter. Okay. What suddenly changed? Nothing. It's the price tag. It's got to be the price tag. And the Jets and everybody else who have definitely been having conversations with his agent, because there's no, like, nobody's like, oh, I want to test the market because, I'm just guessing that my market value is high. No, these things. Everybody knows these things. I would guess that the Jets have been having conversations saying, hey, we're going to pay you pretty well. And that Justin's saying, no, that sounds way better than no money in Pittsburgh. Probably got a little jazzed up with the DK Metcalf trade. But I do look at Aaron Rodgers as doesn't feel good, but it's not the worst. What I'm hearing is Justin Fields is still very much so in play, but that the Steelers they're trying to send this message as strongly and as swiftly as they can, because they are aware that their money's not going to match New York's. And they need to make sure that their effort in free agency and in trades is strong enough to say, we've put a team here for you. Come win with this team. Come do this. We trust you. Come win in Pittsburgh. They also are planning to make an offer to Sam Darnold. And I don't know what that offer is. I don't know how much money they're willing to offer him. I am not under the belief that Sam Darnold's going to get $40 million a year. I haven't really been. I mean, people have talked about that pretty extensively. There's not really a team out there that's going to be willing to offer Sam Darnold $40 million. Now, Sam is still expected to go to Seattle. That is still the top landing spot for Sam Darnold. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to throw their hat in the ring, and they are going to make an offer to Sam Darnold today. What that offer is, I don't know. How strong that offer will be, I do not know. But that is the Pittsburgh Steelers pecking order right now. Justin Fields, who an offer is already on the table. Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, every time I have these conversations, I ask the same question. Russ? I get the same response. Yeah, like I guess, Russ is still there. He's still an option, I guess. But it doesn't seem all options will be exhausted before it's Russell Wilson. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it's Justin. I'm hearing it's Sam Darnold. I'm hearing it's Aaron Rodgers, in that order. But right now, they're not confident any of the three are super locked into Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers is probably the most to be locked into Pittsburgh, because he's not going to pass up an opportunity on a good team. The other two probably would. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't feel good, but we're here 2.5 hours away from when this thing starts. Are you nervous? What are you dreading the announcement of Aaron Rodgers? Are you dreading the announcement of Sam Darnold for $25-30 million a year? And do you have any confidence left that Justin Fields is making his way back to Pittsburgh?
Not before that deadline. No, I think that Justin is going to make it to, at the very least, the legal tampering period, so he can officially get that contract offer from the New York Jets. But my question is simply, like, what is the gap that Justin's willing to accept? Because we've talked about it in the past that as far as team construction wise, the Jets and the Steelers are very similar. Now, DK Metcalf certainly raises the Steelers' stock in that, but also let's not forget the New York Jets do have Garrett Wilson, who has a pre-existing pre-existing relationship with Justin Fields. Plus, there's an era of newness with the New York Jets and what they could be. So I'm not sure what Justin is thinking right now and how he's viewing that New York Jets team, because it could be about money, but it also could be about, hey, that's a team on the rise. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been trying to do this year in and year out, and it just hasn't been working. So that's my question with Justin. I still think, and I think most people would agree with this, that the best opportunity for the Steelers to win both now and going forward is to bring back Justin Fields. Yeah. If that's off the table, it's a crapshoot, because I'm not sure I trust Sam Darnold to replicate what he did without Kevin O'Connell. I'm not sure I trust Aaron Rodgers to revitalize his career after 2 years ago missing the entire season with a devastating ankle injury, and last year showing that while from time to time he can still spin it, he is still that guy. The overwhelming majority of the time, he just isn't it anymore. And then Russell Wilson being plan D at this point, I think it's where he fits. But honestly, you might get to plan D a lot quicker than you expected with the way that this is all laid out. So I think if it's Justin, I'll be ecstatic. If it's anybody else, I'm going to need some convincing. And I think that's where we stand right now is we're going to probably need some convincing by the end of this week that the Pittsburgh Steelers actually handled their quarterback situation correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And to be honest, like you say, handle their quarterback situation correctly. I'm curious to see how it all plays out, because I think that there are two sides to the handling it correctly situation. There is like you're alluding to, you have to sign the right guy, which should be Justin Fields. That's handling it correctly. I agree. But if Justin Fields signs for $25 million a year in New York, and Sam Darnold signs for $30 million in Seattle, or $40 million in Seattle, and Russ signs in New York with the Giants, Aaron Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh for $10 million. In my eyes, that's handling it. That's the other side of the coin that I think me, you, and everybody else is avoiding, because it's such a disastrous situation. But that's also all right, they didn't do anything stupid. You know what I mean? They didn't freak out here and make a mistake, because I have a lot of confidence in Justin Fields. I do, but I don't have $25 million, $30 million worth of confidence in Justin Fields. I just, not for multiple years. I mean, if you want to do it 1 year, and again, I think the best case scenario for Justin Fields is a 2-year, $40 million deal where it's $25 million in the second year and $15 million in the first year. And I think that gives everybody exactly what they're looking for. Now, if the Steelers are lowballing them at 10, 12, whatever that number is, okay, they did not handle this correctly. They have messed up pretty tremendously. And at the same time, if they put all of this together, if they go out and tender Jaylen Warren, which has not happened yet, and I mean, we're all getting a little concerned about that. If they go out and land a running back, if they go out and land left tackle competition, if they go out and land another safety, if they go out and land a big splash at corner, which is now definitely on the table, if they go out and make all these moves and they're sitting there with nobody at quarterback, I mean, you didn't do enough. You almost did enough. You got really close to doing enough, but you didn't do enough. And now you're waiting another year in hopes that DK doesn't get old. That, I mean, you could look at it and say that TJ Watt doesn't get old, that Cam Hayward isn't ready to walk away after a bad year. All of these questions come into play if you don't pull it off this year with a quarterback. I don't think they pull it off. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team this year, but they're going to prepare themselves as one. And if you don't have a quarterback, all that goes out the table. So I agree with you. I'm interested to see what happens. We'll find out at noon. I think it's going to get real crazy real fast. Jerry Dulac, you saw it today. And I just got a phone call now that I had to deny. So we might have an update as soon as I get off this podcast. I saw Jerry Dulac tweet today that just said, "Stay tuned, ... And we all knew chaos is coming, and it's coming quick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. I expect plenty to happen, and for it to honestly happen very quickly. The Steelers are going to make moves, and they're not going to wait around. They signed Mitch Trubisky. This is how you know the NFL talks before all this happens. They signed Mitch Trubisky about 15 seconds into free agency last year, or 15 seconds into the legal tampering period. I mean, every single year you have guys that sign like when it used to be midnight, which I could only imagine what it was like covering the NFL when it was midnight. There would be guys, Chris Hainsworth or whatever his name was, way back in the day, big defensive tackle for the Titans. When he signed with, I believe, Washington, it was at 12 o'clock on the nose to a massive contract. You're telling me that was just put on the table right at midnight, and they were like, "Oh, that looks good. Let's just do it." No, these things are already in place. You know, anybody who believes legal tampering doesn't mean just the NFL turns their head a little bit. You're fooling yourself here. All right, that's everything on our agenda. We've talked DK Metcalf. We've talked Aaron Rodgers. We've talked what I am hearing at quarterback, and I'm sure I'm going to hear a lot more. We're going to finish off the show the same way we do every single day. We're going to answer all your questions because there are a boatload of them. And then we are going to head into free agency where chaos will presume, and we will have literally news after news coming your way throughout the next probably week, maybe two here at All Steelers Talk. All right, Nick, with that said, I'm excited. Let's dive into it. Oh, let's dive into it. Let's start with Derek's on the reaction, because we did forget to play one very important clip of Ben Roethlisberger.
Okay, which one are we starting with? You're mentioning Derek.
Sprained my ankle. Celebrating the trade for DK. Here's first off, incredible. Would love to know the backstory to that one. If you are a member, Derek, call in for the show on Wednesday, because I need to know the backstory of you spraining your ankle of celebrating for DK Metcalf. Is it better than Big Ben? For those of you who haven't heard Big Ben, let's play it now.
Coach T, are you kidding me? DK Metcalf on one side, GP on the other, Muth work in the middle, and I might need to throw my hat in the ring. If you're looking for a guy, I might still have a couple throws in me.
I mean, what's better there? Good old Big Ben, Chris Boswell. I mean, everybody else and their mother tweeting everything out, looking for DK. Phenomenal time. Shout out Derek, man. Hope the ankle's doing good.
All right, with that, let's get to some more DK Metcalf reactions, starting with Michael, who says, DK, what the F? What do you think this means for Pickens? I'm trying not to swear. It's kid-friendly show. What do you think this means for George Pickens? I say tag him like the Bengals do with T. Higgins. Where does this wide receiver duo rank in the NFL, in your opinion?
So the problem with tagging him is that you can't tag him this season, and that's where things get difficult. Is that you'd have to convince him to play on the last year of his rookie deal, and most guys are not willing to do that. So it's going to be tough. T. Higgins, to be honest with you, I think is getting screwed in this situation. I think he's been screwed because he gave in last year and said, yeah, screw it, let's just do it. You know, I have the team around me. Let's try to win a Super Bowl. I don't think Pickens is going to be that favorable for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where does this wide receiver do? I mean, if they stay, they got to be top 10 in the NFL, easily top 10 in the NFL. I mean, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins tops that list. I don't really know anybody else who off the top of my head would compete with that unless you do. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, easy. This is top 10.
I mean, the brand new minted Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua duo in LA is probably up there. But again,
that's definitely
have
up
a
there.
Conversation.
That's definitely up there. A little bit younger in the Steelers' favor, which is good, but definitely up there as well.
Let's go to Potatoes Salad, who says, we finally made a move. Please tell me the almighty Friar Muth can expect better than Russell Wilson. Good wide receivers does not mean that you can cheap out on the quarterback.
I agree. So unfortunately, the Steelers don't really have options not to cheap out on the quarterback, which might not work in their favor. When it comes to Pat Freiermuth and what he could expect, it depends on the quarterback. If it's Russ, can't expect good things. Aaron Rodgers has also been called out time and time again for not utilizing the middle of the field, which is not going to work in the Steelers' favor as well. I think Justin Fields is still their best bet. Sam Darnold is a close second. If you could get one of those two, I would imagine Pat Freiermuth is in for a much better season in 2025.
Let's go down to Smooty Booty, who says, as much as I disagree with trying to win now, this is the way to do it. If you're going to do it, you do it right.
I agree. I think the Steelers have set themselves up here with a first chest move that puts them in position to win. Like, that's what it does. You went out and got your wide receiver, and you got him for a price that doesn't really impact the rest of your offseason. I think that works out perfectly. You can now go in there. Like, think of the best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They get to ink a Darius Slayton. They could trade George Pickens for a second-round pick, which means that they just traded DK Metcalf for George Pickens and a higher second-round pick. That's essentially what that would mean. You could go out and draft defensive tackles and running backs and make a splash at corner. You could go figure out quarterback, although those options are much scarier than every other position possible. I just think the Steelers have set themselves up to succeed this offseason and to put themselves in a much better position than they've been in years. You know, they've slowly built this, which is huge, and you can't ignore the offensive line. That's the biggest part here that we will all overlook all offseason long as running backs and quarterbacks and wide receivers and corners are all coming into play. We will ignore the offensive line. None of it works if the offensive line doesn't. But the Steelers have set themselves up to where if it does and they get a quarterback, they're in a good spot. Very good spot.
Let's go on to John, who says you should draft Jackson Dart now.
I have Have been told the Steelers do have interest in Jackson Dart. I don't know where that interest lies in what round. I think it depends on what other teams view him as. But the Steelers are a team that are interested in Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milrose up there, but I don't know how high. Will Howard, all on the Pittsburgh Steelers radar right now. I would not, to be honest, rule out a rookie quarterback. I do think a rookie quarterback is going to end up on the Steelers. What round, I don't know, but I actually fully anticipate a rookie being on the Steelers roster in 2025.
Let's skip down to this one because this is breaking news from Pittsburgh Post-Gazette 2 minutes ago and some unfortunate news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rest in peace to Craig Wolfley.
Oh my gosh, that is awful, dude. That is, wow. I don't even know how to react to that. Wow. I don't know how. I don't know what happened. Wolf was the man, dude. Wolf is, wow, that's a stunner, man. That's a tough one, dude. Craig Wolfley was one of the greatest humans I've ever met in my entire life. I'm very fortunate to have known him. So shout out to Greg, man. And thoughts and prayers to his entire family. I'm sure I'll be calling some of them after this, but wow, that's brutal. That's a tough one.
Yeah. So we obviously have to remain with the show, get all of your guys' comments because you guys have thrown in a lot, but of course, thoughts and prayers from the entire AST family to the entire Wolfley family and the entire Steelers organization who lost a very important member of their crew. Let's go to Derek, who says, why haven't the Steelers just locked in Fields instead of these funky Aaron Rodgers rumors?
Because Justin Fields hasn't locked in the Steelers. That's what it comes down to, is it goes both ways. The Steelers need to ink Justin Fields, and Justin Fields needs to agree to want to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And right now he is not on the same page. I don't know what is going on. The Steelers have made offers. It's as much as everybody wants to blame the Steelers in this situation, you can't. It's Justin Fields. Right now it's Justin Fields. It's the ball's in his court. He is not picking it up. He is not looking to sign right now. So it's until we know what the contract was. If it was super cheap, that's on the Steelers. But if it was reasonable and he was just looking to see his market value, it's just on Justin Fields to want to sign this.
Let's jump to Mac Mars, who says pay Pickens and add Waddle and Smith. Or Pickens to a Jalen Waddle and
Smith,
Devonta
Smith deal. I do think that could work. I don't know if George is going to be into it. If he is, that's awesome. If the Steelers want to pull that off, that's incredible. But I just think the wide receiver market has expanded so much that I have a hard time believing anybody's going to be looking for a cheap deal right now, especially George Pickens. If the Steelers were a Super Bowl team right now, that's a conversation to be had. But the Steelers are not a Super Bowl team where we sit currently right this very second. So unless that changes, I have a hard time believing that George Pickens would be willing to take a hometown discount to stay with the Pittsburgh Steelers long-term.
Let's go to Egyptian Roughneck, who says, how about Damar Hamlin since he is now a free agent?
I actually love this move. I love this move. Damar Hamlin is, I think you'd fit perfectly in what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to do. I think it would be such a phenomenal signing for the Steelers. A guy who doesn't need to start, could come off the bench and be the perfect bench guy. Works well behind Minkah Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Elliott, could do a little bit of everything in both pass coverage and in the run support. I actually love Damar Hamlin. He said previously that he would love to finish his career in Pittsburgh. Well, this is a step in the right direction here. I think that I actually really like the Damar Hamlin thought.
Let's jump to Chris, who says getting DK for a second is an absolute victory. Now that Pittsburgh has a dynamic duo at wide receiver, should we try to get Trevor Lawrence since he lost Kristen Kirk?
I don't think that could happen. I would imagine that, look, it didn't make any sense for the Steelers to strongly deny their interest in Trevor Lawrence back then, but they made it very clear that they don't have interest in Trevor Lawrence. So I don't think it would happen. I think it would be awesome. If you traded for Trevor Lawrence for a first-round pick, got DK, somehow kept George Pickens, you're in a good spot. You're in a real good spot. Your defense might struggle, but you're in a pretty good spot if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Unfortunately, I just don't think the Steelers have the interest in Trevor Lawrence, and I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars are looking to get rid of their franchise quarterback.
Chris has another one here, whereas if you don't get Trevor Lawrence, says, I think a QB in the third is our best bet at quarterback.
I agree with that, but I also disagree with that because I mean, I would imagine they're going to have a veteran. The Steelers are going to have a veteran. They're not going to head into the draft without a quarterback. That will not happen. But I would also imagine that the third round is where they start to look for a backup. I'm okay with that, but I also think you're avoiding running back. You might be avoiding another position of need right there in the third round that you need more crucially right now than you do a quarterback. The DK trade throws that for a loop because you need running back and defensive tackle before you could touch a quarterback in the draft. And I just don't know. Maybe the fourth round. But if they could get a second for George Pickens, that moves back up to a third.
Let's go to Demetrius, who says Tomlin blew it when he benched Justin Fields last year. I wouldn't trust Tomlin. Now he wants to go back to the QB graveyard. Plus, Tomlin just won't keep his hands off the offense.
Yeah. I don't know if I believe the trust thing. And if the trust thing is true, I get that, but like, why have both sides been so open to a return? Like, why has Justin Fields been so open to a return to the Steelers this entire process? And now suddenly, as the Jets show interest, as these other teams emerge as candidates, now Justin Fields is saying things like, or his camp is saying things like, I don't know if I trust the Steelers to make me the full-time starter. Like, how are the Steelers would not be negotiating with Justin Fields to say, you're going to come in here and compete with X. That doesn't make it. They've made it so abundantly known all offseason that him or Russell Wilson, if they returned, would be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 25. That's what they've made very, very clear. I don't know where those reports are coming from. I have no idea. I've been told it's money. I've been told it's all money, that Justin Fields knows his value is higher than what the Pittsburgh Steelers are offering him, and the Steelers are not budging enough. So that part, I mean, we're going to find out eventually. We are going to find out eventually if the Steelers have offered him a reasonable deal and whose fault it is that he did not come back to Pittsburgh, if he doesn't come back to Pittsburgh. But I just don't think it's the benching thing. That one to me just feels so far-fetched and came out of nowhere so late in this situation that it just doesn't make sense.
You wanted more reactions to the DK trade, and Egyptian Roughneck provided, says, got one better. Saw the trade, jumped up and down, and knocked the lasagna off the stove, ruined dinner, wife angry, but hey, we got DK, so it was all worth it.
That's hey, look it. There is no reaction that is a bad reaction to DK Metcalf. I was coming up the steps to my office, actually, ready to calm down for the night. Literally turned the PlayStation on. It was like, 8:25 or something like that. I was like, oh, we're ready to roll. Crawled into bed at about 11:45, woke my wife up, and she went, where the hell have you been? I was like, oh, you didn't hear? She's never watched a football game in her life. You didn't hear? DK Metcalf's a Pittsburgh Steeler. So all reactions are good reactions. Shout out. Hope the lasagna made it, to be honest with you. I hope the lasagna stuck around at least enough to enjoy it.
If the wife was angry, something tells me the lasagna was, unfortunately not able to make it to the dinner table.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Let's go down to Michael, who says, what is your final prediction? % chance that Justin Fields is the guy that the Pittsburgh Steelers sign?
I would say right now where we currently stand, 65% is how I feel about Justin Fields. 65% that he stays with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You want my second name that is on that prediction list? I would say there's a right now currently 55% chance Aaron Rodgers ends up with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That would be my top two. Sam Darnold might be somewhere around 40. Russ is around 25.
These percentages aren't adding up to me, but
they don't equal 100. They're all out of 100.
Separate. They're each separate. Okay.
100. Yeah, we're money pucking this. It's
if Justin, it's 60% chance of Justin. If Justin doesn't happen, then it's this percent of that. Yeah, okay, it's separate.
Yeah, it's all separate. It's all separate.
We got to give a quick shout out to our newest members that have joined in this show, starting with No Coast Golf, longtime listener, first time member now, as well as Carson. So hope to hear from you guys during the Wednesday call-in show this week.
It's a good week to call in. So appreciate both you guys as always. Thank you guys very, very much.
Let's go to Itkaji, who says, if we get Darnold, who's wearing number 14?
Yeah, so many 14s. So many 14s. I would imagine Darnold's not rocking 14. He would be the first one to move. I'm interested to see if DK or if George Pickens changes their number. I'll say this: DK Metcalf wore number 1 in college. Okay, and
so did George Pickens.
Yeah, George would never in a million years get number 1 though. But the Steelers removed their rule last year with the single digits on defense for Patrick Queen. Sure feels like, $150 million feels like you're very invested to DK Metcalf. Maybe, just maybe, you break your rule for DK and he gets number 1.
Let's go to the next question here. What do you think of us trying to get Huafunga trade and trade away Minka and find someone in the draft?
I think it would work. I think Huafunga is a fantastic safety. He's got ties to Troy Polamalu, which would be awesome. I think Minka holds his most value right now for a trade, which I, don't know if I fully support, but it makes a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, it won't happen. That is not in the cards for the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. They have no reason to change anything at safety, or at least in their heads. But if it did happen, I think it would work. I don't know about getting somebody in the draft. I think maybe a little bit later in the draft. I'm not really in love with this safety class. But I do think that in hypothetical world, this is a good move. It wouldn't happen though, unfortunately.
Let's go to Maddie, who says few things here. If they want mobility, why would they go after Aaron Rodgers? I think that it's the complete opposite way to go. And then she says, can they realistically get a deal done with Justin Fields?
So when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, at some point you got to break what you're looking for and you just have to settle. And that's what the Steelers would be looking at when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. At that point, they've lost everything they're looking for. It's not like Sam Darnold is a mobile quarterback, but there just aren't options out there that the Pittsburgh Steelers can approach right now to fill that need outside of Justin Fields. When it comes to getting a deal done with Justin Fields, I think the Steelers have a shot. I do. And I think if the Jets come back with an offer that isn't super high compared to the Steelers, there is an argument to be made there, and the Steelers have a real shot at getting Justin Fields done, whether they match it or not, because that's how this will go. You know what I mean? Justin will be looking for the highest bidder, and he's made that very clear, which, to be honest with you, kind of like in my eyes, like I'm all pro player, but if you're just looking for the most amount of money as a guy who's trying to revive his career, you don't have much confidence that your career is going to take off the way that it possibly could at 25, 26 years old. Or you might have too much confidence in yourself in that happening. And if that's the case, sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. It'll become a bidding war. They will get an offer from the Jets. They'll take that offer to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh will have the opportunity to match it. If they do match it or maybe go higher, there's an opportunity. If they don't, which I don't know if they're going to, then Justin will leave and it will not be a long conversation. But that's what it's going to take is what's the Jets price tag? How close are the Steelers willing to get to it?
Let's go to Marlon, who says, I heard Dan Orlovsky say earlier that Justin won't maximize Pickens and DK Metcalf. Do you believe that?
Yeah, Dan Orlovsky's a good dude, man. And, he's good at his job. But to say that any quarterback isn't going to maximize George Pickens and DK, Chris Boswell, who jokingly said somebody's down there last night, would honestly have a shot to complete a couple of passes to DK Metcalf and George Pickens. It's not going to take much. I don't even know what is maximizing George Pickens and DK Metcalf besides throwing the football down the field accurately. something Justin Fields can do. So I don't know if I agree with this one. I saw it. It didn't make sense to me. Dan's all over the place. He jumps ship quite a bit with his analyses. And this time to be honest, it just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense.
Let's go to Marlon again, who says, what is TJ's price tag now with Max Crosby and Myles Garrett both getting massive extensions?
Yeah, it's right smack dab in the middle of Myles Garrett and Max Crosby, and the Steelers have messed up big time because they should have signed him last year. They would have got it done for $32 million a year, would have looked really good, would have made him feel great. People would have been upset with it when he got taken away at the end of the year, and they would have been pushing for a trade, but it would have made total sense to keep him anyways. Now it's like $36 million. You better play good in 2025. You better play phenomenal in 2025. So I would guess that number is $37 million right there. I don't think they're going to hit 40, but I would imagine it's right in that ballpark.
Let's go to Carl Spackler, who says, hey, Noah, if you could and had to pull any quarterback out of retirement right now to lead the team, who would it be?
Ben Roethlisberger would be awesome. But, any quarterback ever, it's Tom Brady.
Yeah,
it's definitely Tom Brady. Tom Brady with DK Metcalf and George Pickens would be unbelievable. But it would be more fun with Ben, certainly.
Let's go to Carl's second question here. It wasn't a question, more of a statement. Hey, Noah, I left another voicemail today on Rodgers. Skip my first one from the other day, please.
Yes, sir. We'll do.
Let's go to Lindsay, who says, do you think the Steelers' move was done to soften the blow of them bringing Russell Wilson back?
No, it was not, because I asked last night, like everybody wrote we haven't put it out yet, but we wrote is Russ coming back to the Steelers? Is that what DK Metcalf means? And I made phone calls, and those phone calls were, again, the answer was like, yeah. And Russ is still there. It just doesn't seem, he's not high on their list. And they're going to go other options if they could. It was not made to bring back Russell Wilson.
Let's go to Sam, who says, does the DK move make you guys more comfortable with a rookie if that is where the Steelers end up?
No, it does not. I don't want a rookie. I don't think a rookie works out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you want to draft one in the middle of the draft, great. But drafting a rookie in this draft class to say, you are our starter, you got to figure it out while ignoring other key positions like defensive tackle and running back, do not make sense to me at all. So I think that I'd rather go Aaron Rodgers. I'd rather go Danny Dimes than I would a rookie quarterback that is going to start in 2025. Just in my head, it doesn't make any sense, and it really lowers the bar for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's go to the next question here, which is Rodgers crashed and burned in New York. Hopefully he's just leveraged to sign Justin. Our offensive line is not mature enough for a veteran like that. Shout out to AST.
Shout out. Appreciate you as always. I would imagine that all these quarterbacks are a little bit of leverage for Justin Fields. But again, the Steelers don't hold leverage over Justin Fields right now. They don't. Money talks, and other teams are interested. The Steelers know that. They should have got a deal done the first week of February, to just say like, hey, here's a contract before your agent hears anything from New York or anywhere else. This is the deal we're going to give you. They didn't do that. And because of that, they've found themselves in a place where like Justin could look at it and say, I don't care if Aaron Rodgers goes to you. I have other teams that want me, and they're good teams. So if that's the case, they don't hold the leverage. Justin Fields holds all leverage over the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's just a matter of money at this point. This is what it comes down to, is money.
Let's go to David, who says, what are the chances the Steelers take Jahdae Barron in the first round?
I would say low. They do like him, and I would imagine they go to Texas Pro Day, and he was very impressive to speak with at the Combine, and I heard his meetings went well. But I don't think they're going corner in the first round. I think defensive tackle is where I stand. Nobody's convinced me otherwise yet. I don't know if that's going to change unless they make some crazy move in free agency over the next couple of days.
Let's go to Jay Chaps Snacks Review, who says, what's the latest on Najee Harris?
As of the time we started recording this podcast, I have not heard anything of Najee Harris. I think the Steelers are going to let him head into free agency, and if he gets a good contract, he'll go elsewhere. If he gets no contracts or low contracts, him and the Pittsburgh Steelers will have some negotiations. But I don't think they're willing to negotiate a real price tag for him. They are only willing to negotiate like his second, third offer to say like, okay, you're not really getting anything. It's Juju Smith-Schuster. It's Terrell Edmonds, excuse me. It's guys that go into the market who don't have the market they thought they were going to, and then the Steelers can take advantage. That's how I look at Najee as of right now.
Let's go to Lewis or Louis, whichever way. Says, I would rather have Russ than Aaron Rodgers.
I think there's an argument for and against that. Certainly. Sometimes news more exciting, and that's what it could be. I also think that the Russ and Arthur Smith stuff makes things very weird. That's my only pushback here is I don't know how they'd get along. I feel like the tension might be a little strange to develop an offense around.
Let's go to Greg, who says, is there any chance the Steelers trade back out of the first round to gain additional picks, especially to recoup that second that they just gave up for DK?
There's a possibility, but it depends on who's there in the first round. They're not going to do it before the draft. They would never do it before the draft. If they sit there at 21 and there's nobody that they feel good about, or there's too many people that they feel good about, they could move back, but that's a very specific circumstance type of situation. One of those two things would have to happen. I don't find it likely that either will, to be honest with you, though.
Let's finish it off with this programming inquiry from Smooty Booty. Will you guys go live whenever the Steelers inevitably do end up signing their quarterback?
Most likely. At least I will. Chances are they sign at like 10 o'clock at night, which if that's the case, we'll go live the next morning. But there will be obviously a reaction video to any big signing that the Steelers make over the next week. But if they ink a quarterback and we're here and we're rocking, we will be on and we will have plenty of reaction to that quarterback.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here and heading into free agency. Chaos is about to start. Make sure that you're logged in and subscribed. Hit that notification button, the whole nine, to not only just All Steelers Talk, but si.com/NFL/Steelers, both of our Twitter accounts. It is going to get chaotic, and it is going to get chaotic real fast. I am super excited for it. I'm super excited to bring all you guys all the news. And with that said, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out wherever you get your podcast. Find all our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back most likely before tomorrow, but worst case scenario, we will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.